Wherever we are, whatever we're facing, whatever we think is too big, too great, too large, hold on to us. Let your spirit be present. Let your spirit speak. In your many names, I pray. Amen. So today, I titled it Expectation versus Expiration. But before I get going, hey, you came in, I saw you, and I didn't stop and say, hey. So, hey, welcome. Expectation versus expiration. And when I first started thinking about this topic, I was thinking about if we don't have great expectations, if we don't expect good things, then what are we expecting? And does that lead quickly to our expiration? So expectation is the feeling that good things are going to happen in the future. That's the way the dictionary defined it. But, as the song said, there can be the weight of expectation. And when the expectations become too heavy, then what? It doesn't sound like they're good expectations at that point, does it? It sounds like they might be a little bad. And it's not necessarily that they're bad, it's just someone is expecting something of you. Someone is looking at you and going, hey, Joni, I want you to go do X, Y, and Z, and I expect you to be the one that can pull this off. And then Joni, who's probably going, that is not my area of expertise. I do not do that. That's your job, not my job. Starts trying to do it and starts trying to do it in the same way that the person who told her to do it would do it. And the stress of it gets Joni and wrecks Joni. Right, Joni? It happens.
That sounds valid, yeah.
So expectations are just these feelings of things that we expect to come. We hope that they come, or we need them to come. Expiration. Now, how many know what expiration is? That means something done come to an end. If it's in your refrigerator, it's turned into a science experiment, so you might want to toss it. So expectation versus expiration. And when I started thinking about those things, I stumbled across, for not the first time, my good friend King Saul. So I'm going to pick up in a spot, and I need to warn you, when I read it, you're going to go, wait, she's going to build a whole message around that. Just bear with me. So our text for today is 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 4. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. That's an expiration, is it not? Saul took his own sword and fell on it. But why? Why did Saul fall on his own sword? What happened to Saul? What journey did Saul go through? Well, in chapter 17, a little dude named David faced a big dude named Goliath. Everybody know that one? Mm-hmm. And so when David faced Goliath and killed Goliath, well, everybody kind of started singing David's praises. And even Saul liked him. Saul brings him in. It's like, hey, you're awesome. But then the people keep loving David. And Saul, to quote our friend Felice, starts feeling some kind of way. Saul's like, everybody loves him. What's this about? And Saul gets in his feelings. And instead of thinking great things or good things, Saul starts festering. He's sitting in his yuck, contemplating David overthrowing him. David being loved more than him. David becoming the next it thing. And Saul gets upset. In chapter 19, he tries to kill David for the first time. And then when he tried to kill David, what do you think happened? All of those feelings, all of that yuck Saul had been sitting in, all of those things he had been building up in his head, now Saul can't see past them. It's only the bad. So Saul tries to take David's life, and then David is like, whoa, dude, what? And at that point, there are kids in the room, so I'm going to change what I wrote to say. All heck broke loose. Because chapter 23, verse 14 tells us, day after day, Saul pursued David. Day after day, Saul thought about how David was going to replace him, how David was destroying his world, how David was the source of all of his angst, how David had to be eliminated. Do you see where I'm going with this? Day after day after day, Saul pursued David. His thoughts pursued David. His thoughts pursued how bad life was because of David. What would have happened if day after day after day Saul had sought holy?
Amen.
What would have happened if day after day Saul had said, okay, I know that David's the next king, and I know that I messed up, but from now on, I'll try to do the right things, and we'll lead the kingdom, and then when it's time, David becomes the king, and all will be well. What would have happened if he would have thought that way? What if Saul would have sat down and said, Saul, you're the king right now. Pull yourself together, boy. Stop acting crazy. Stop worrying about David, and start worrying about what you're doing.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right.
Stop worrying about what somebody else is doing and worry about what you're doing. Stop thinking about all those things people might have done to you, might be saying about you, might be thinking about you, and start thinking about, what does God say about me?
That's right.
What does holy say about me? So I know for most of you this is a repeat because we talk about it a lot. Well, we got some new folks in the room, so let me quickly go through it. I sometimes, almost always, say holy instead of God. So if I flip back and forth between those two things, don't be messed up. It's just, that's my language. I use holy instead of God. Also, something to keep in mind that we talk about a lot, so for most of the people in the room, it's a repeat. I'm always telling us what God thinks of us, am I not? I'm always saying that the number one rule we're supposed to live by is, don't let me down, people.
Love.
There you go. We talk about it every week. I'm wondering if Saul had someone telling him every day of the week, dude, you're just supposed to be loving people. That's all you're supposed to be doing. Why are you throwing swords and stuff at David? Leave that boy alone. Why are you so obsessed? And you know, it led me to our thinking, as it often does. When we let our thinking get out of hand, and all we think about is the negative, all we see is the bad. We think about something that's coming up, and we have great expectations for it, but as we move towards it, we're like, yeah, but if I actually do it, if I actually go through with it, somebody's going to have something to say. Bad news. Somebody always going to have something to say.
That's right.
So if you're supposed to do a thing, do a thing.
That's right.
Last week we talked about how there shouldn't be two sides. It shouldn't be the LGBTQIA plus community and then everybody else. That we should all be loving one another and finding a way to do this together. Saul could have done the same. But day after day, Saul pursued the negative. Day after day, Saul reminded himself, David's the next king. Why are you letting him breathe? David's ruining your life. Why are you letting him breathe? And every time Saul would try to plot to kill David, it didn't work. Couple times, Saul's own children warned David, Daddy's coming after you, run. Oh, another thing from my new people. I paraphrase a lot. I make it my own. So Saul would get mad and say, I'm going to kill David. And then the kids would run and tell David, you better go, Daddy on the path. You got to get going. Hide. And every day Saul pursued David. David ran and hid. He hid in caves. He hid in the mountains. He hid in the woods. Anywhere he could hide, he hid. And Saul kept coming. Now, Saul's expectations were not good expectations. Saul was living his life expecting his expiration. And he wasn't looking at it and thinking, well, since that expiration day is coming, I'm going to try to do all the good I can. Instead, he started to live in fear. He feared David. He feared what would happen when David became king. He feared that everybody loved David and not him. How many times have you heard me say, when you let fear get in here and start eating up at you, everything gonna get wonky. It gets cray-cray. You start doing dumb things. You start saying dumb things. All because there's this fear. My expectation is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna hang out with my friends and I'm gonna have a good time. They're gonna talk about me. I know as soon as I leave, they all gonna talk about me. So maybe I just shouldn't go. Maybe I should put an expiration date on my friendships. Maybe I should say they ain't really my friends no more. They ain't even done nothing. You're just thinking it. Saul was just thinking. Just thinking. David replaces me, therefore David must die. And as Saul became obsessed, the path began to be set. He chased, David would get away. And every time David had a chance to kill Saul, he didn't take it. Now, what was the difference between David and Saul? David told his army of men who hid with him, because the army of, like his band of brothers, right, his little friends, every time Saul was coming up on them or would come into the cave, they'd be like, hey, you can get him now. You can get him now. And every time David would say, no. Because we do not kill the one that God has chosen and anointed. Amen. And he knew that God had been with Saul. He knew that Saul served a purpose. He knew that Saul was supposed to do some things. And he also knew that Saul had messed it up. But it doesn't matter. Because for the past month, what have we been talking about? You can mess up, but there's always what? There's always a comeback. There's always an opportunity for comeback. Holy doesn't look at you and go, oh, you messed that up, bye. Holy looks at you and go, okay, well, you want to try that again? You want to see if we can do better this time? You want to fix your thinking? You want to fix the way you're viewing the world? You want to fix that lens that you're using to see me, to see everybody else? Do you want to correct that? Or do you want to stay where you're at? You can stay there if you want to. I'm just asking. And sometimes we look at Holy and go, shut up. I don't want to. Why are we talking about this? I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about how so-and-so is out to get me and this is all going to heck in a handbasket. That's what I want to focus on. And then what? Proverbs tells us, 23:7, as a person thinks in their heart, so they are. That means what you let consume your heart becomes your entire existence. So you can let your heart be full of great expectations, of love, of hope, of joy. Or you can fill your heart with dread and fear of your expiration. And believe me, it does determine how you walk and talk and move. That's right. I started this morning by I like to get onto myself too, so I'll tell the truth. I got up this morning, I looked out the window, and I looked at Sherry, and I said, ain't nobody going to be at church today. She said, why? I said, do you not see that it's raining and the sun ain't shining? Their hair might get messed up. They ain't coming to church today. And then Marcy texted. Gonna call Marcy out. And then Marcy texted, and Marcy's like, hey, it's raining. I ain't coming to church today. Ha, 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 ha. What was our expectation? Was it a great one? No. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you something else. Holy, sure enough, ignored my expectations and gave me all of your beautiful faces. Amen. So thank you, and thank you, Holy. But it does impact the way we move, because once I said that, I was not excited to get going this morning. I took my dear sweet time. Sat there, drank my coffee, played with the dog. Sherry come through, you got your notes together? No. I mean, I'll write it down when I get there. I know it's all right. Well, you should probably. I'm okay. Why? Because I started the day with ain't nobody gonna be there. And so it impacted my mood. So if you're facing whatever you're facing and you're going, this ain't gonna work, I'm gonna fall flat on my face and this is gonna be a disaster, guess what it's gonna be? A disaster. Maybe. Because the Holy always gives the comeback. There's always the opportunity for comeback. Now Saul, bless his heart, he did not take the opportunity for comeback. Which is why the verse started. Our starting verse was, so Saul took his own sword and fell on it. Saul had set his course. He couldn't get his thinking right. He couldn't get his heart right. He was obsessed with all the negatives surrounding David. And because he was obsessed with all the negative surrounding David, he couldn't see that there was still a path for him. He couldn't see that God was still saying, Saul, you're still the king right now. We can still do good stuff. Saul couldn't move past the rage, the anger, the fear of David. And it got me thinking, what is it that we focus on? Christy, it's Pride Month. You're supposed to be talking about uplifting things. You ain't supposed to be coming at us with this. We're supposed to be talking about Stonewall. We're supposed to be talking about parades. We're supposed to be talking about rainbows. What is this? This is me asking you, where is your heart? What is it focused on? What do you give all of your attention? What do you give all of your time? Is it negativity? Is it depressing things? Do you ever have positive thoughts? Do you ever look at the world and go, woo, it's going to be a great day? Or do you get up and go, oh, it's raining, they ain't going to go to church today? Do you believe that good things are coming? Do you expect good things to come? Or are you just sitting back and waiting for the expiration date and thinking your expiration date can't get here fast enough because you're tired of dealing with everybody and all their negativity? How you think matters. What you give your time matters. Are you obsessed with the goodness of all of the love that surrounds us? Or are you obsessed with all of the little things that don't make sense that you want to pick apart? Are you obsessed with holy loves me, the greatest rule is love, I'm going to live by love? Or are you obsessed with, as we often can be, why does holy love me? I don't feel like I'm worth anything. Why does holy love me? Why does holy even want to know my name? What we focus on matters. What we give our attention to matters, because as we think in our hearts, we are. So if your heart is full of joy, yay you! If your heart is full of doubt, confusion, anger, like Saul, paranoia, like Saul, there's hope. Because holy always provides the path for the comeback. And even though Saul didn't get his, David repeatedly had comebacks. And we'll talk more about David as we move on. But for this week, what I want you to do is I want you to concentrate on, where is my thinking? What am I thinking on? What am I giving all my time, all my effort, all of my energy? And if you find that you're giving all of it to the negative, I want you to get it under control. I want you to say, okay, Holy, I'm thinking about the yucky stuff. Give me something good to think about. Help me lift my expectations to the next level. Help me believe that good things are coming. Help me believe that no matter what happens, no matter how people react to me, no matter how they treat me, you are with me. Yes. You are on my side. And together, me and you, we do great things. Anytime a negative thought comes this week, I want you to flip it. Because what we think about matters. And expectation needs to exceed our fear of our expiration. Our fear of what could be. Our expectations need to outweigh all the other stuff so that we can be all we are meant to be. And what we're meant to be is people who love, people who believe that things are possible when we do truly love one another. Things are possible when we come together in community. Things are possible when we focus on holy and not on all the yuck in the world. And if you're here with me, it is my hope that at this point you would say, Amen. And so it is.